Linebacker Daveon Crouch will be the best defensive player on Boston College's roster in 2025.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider. I've been covering Boston College for over 10 years, and if you're looking for analysis, scoops, and all the details on your Boston College Eagles, you are in the right place. For 10 years, I've been doing this. This podcast has been around for 5, and we are a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. On today's show, we're going to do some bold predictions. We're going to look at where BC will end up at the end of the season, some bold spots on what we think about this quarterback position and how good this defense will be. And to do those bold predictions, I'm not going to make them. I'm going to have Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider on, and this is Mitch Wolf. Mitch, how's it going?
I suppose it's fair that you sell me out to take all the blame if these go wrong, since it was my idea. And when I say my idea, I mean I stole it from the guys over at Locked On NFL Scouting, Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs, who also host Locked On Bills and Locked On Dolphins, respectively. Love their podcast, been a fan of theirs for a long time. So I thought, it'd be fun to do this for BC. I don't think we can really do dueling ones like they can, just because they're talking about 32 different teams, whereas we're all just talking about one team. But I thought it'd be fun to. Yeah, I was thinking about the roster while I was in the process of moving and driving across the country from Colorado to Delaware. So I had a lot of time to think about stuff. So naturally, I thought about BC football.
I'm most excited that now I can text you. We're in the same time zone now. I usually had to wait a few hours for Mitch to get up to talk to him about work stuff, but now he's an East Coast man.
That is nice, but I'm sad about sports time, like the timing of sports games, because I am going to miss being able to watch Sunday Night Football and then go to bed at like a very reasonable time, as opposed to now when I will not be able to do that.
Okay, so let's get into these bold predictions. I know you've got some good ones today. Let's start with the defense. Daveon Crouch, bam. He's out there. He's looking great. What are some of the bold predictions you have on Crouch?
So for Bam, my bold prediction or bold bet, if you will, which is, again, I'm not sure. I don't think the guys over at Locked On NFL Scouting have trademarked it, so it's fair use. My bold bet is that Daveon Crouch will lead Boston College in total tackles, solo tackles, tackles for loss, and stops. And stops is a PFF stat, Pro Football Focus, that is tackles that result in a negative play for the offense. So you could still be a 2-yard gain, but if it's 3rd and 8, then it's still a stop because you don't get the first down or what have you. So I'm trying to find the last time a player did this for BC. It's probably been, I would guess, maybe since Vinny DePalma did it in what would be 2023, I guess. But even then, I'm not sure if he was playing enough because he rotated out a decent bit. You probably have to go back pretty far in the record books to find the guy who did that the last. But I think Crouch has a really good chance to do it. My one concern would be that the lack of talent on the defensive line in front of him to keep him clean. But I think he's a really dynamic playmaker, something that he flashed 2 years ago in limited playing time. And this year it kind of all came to fruition. So I could see him having a very statistically productive season this year for the Eagles defense.
So you're looking at Crouch and, are you thinking this is the type of guy that will be what level all ACC do you think he would be, or not at all? Do you think he'll?
I think it's tough because linebacker is very loaded in the ACC right now. You have the guys at Clemson, you have the guys at Pitt. So they're going to be pretty much locks for it. If you look at teams like Louisville brings back both their starters. They're both pretty solid players. I think Stanquan Clark was the one who got all ACC honorable mention last year. So they've got guys. Trying to just go through the teams in my mind. I think it's possible. Like he could I would think probably all ACC 3rd team, likely honorable mention. Even if he does, I think a reasonable number, like I think you could get probably 80 some tackles, probably looking like 40 to 50 solos, maybe 8 tackles for loss. And then stops. Let me see. I think that would probably like 50-ish for stops. I think that'd probably be a reasonable number. I was going to add forced fumbles to this, but I'm going to take that off because with how crazy BC safeties are in terms of their tackling technique, I think it could be Carter Davis or Omar Thornton because those dudes are absolute missiles on the back end. So I could see them just kind of lucking into some forced fumbles, which is very Very random stat, by the way. I can just see them lucking into a few just because of how much they fly around.
And by his own admittance, he's also going to lead the team in trash talking too, because
I would love to have a stat for that.
he's out there. I think he said it during ACC media days that that's his thing. But it's great to see him back on the field. He's
Crouch had 32 stops last year, so I think that number will go up. Ezra Rocco had 42 for context, so I think you could see that number get into the 40s, maybe in the 50s this year.
Okay, what's your second bold prediction, or bold bet that you have?
My second one will be, I'll stay on the defense. I think BC will lead the ACC interceptions. And this one is, I would say, pretty bold. BC was definitely up there last year. I think they were tied for first. They were second interceptions. I unfortunately don't have the number pulled up in front of me. I have let me see. 17 interceptions. So pretty good number. That's going to be hard to replicate, especially when you don't have, as good of a pass rush as they had last year. But I honestly think that I think their presence will create more sacks. I think the talent of the secondary will create more coverage sacks, so that'll be good. But I still think you're going to see this unit be a ball hawking unit. You're going to get Amari Jackson back. Hopefully, he can stay healthy for the whole year. KB Price, I've talked about. I think he's an awesome player, arguably one of the best safeties. Well, he is one of the best safeties in the ACC, just very underrated. Carter Davis and Omar Thornton are playmakers, and we've both talked a lot about Zaire Torrance and what he can do for this defense. It seems like he's going to be a breakout player this year. So if he's kind of the under the radar guy that a lot of teams don't really know about, he could rack up some interceptions early when teams are going after him, and then he can make some plays in the ball when the opposing teams are not expecting it. So I think you've got a very talented secondary here. I think you're going to see teams try to test them early, and I think it's going to go badly for them. Especially it helps if you look at the early part of the season, BC is not facing a lot of good quarterbacks. You're facing Fordham, you're facing Michigan State. We saw Aiden Childs' proclivity towards turning the ball over last year. You're looking at Stanford and Cal. They turn over the ball a ton. Eli Holstein at Pitt throws a lot of interceptions, has a lot of turnover-worthy plays. Once you get into that October, November, it might dry up a bit, especially once you get to
Kate Klubnik.
Kate Klubnik. UConn's going to run the ball a lot. Notre Dame's going to run the ball a lot. Georgia Tech's going to run the ball a ton. So you might just not have as many dropbacks, but I think they can really rack them up early in the season. Maybe get to that 15 number, and then if they can get a few at the end of the year, maybe they can hold on and keep the lead in the conference for interceptions.
Yeah, I totally agree with this with the Michigan State too. Like Aiden Childs, what do you have? Four? He had 4 picks, I think, against BC last year.
Yeah, and he could have thrown more. Honestly, I think there were 2 or 3 that got dropped, or there was the one where I forget who exactly it was, but I think it was Carter Davis and it might have been Amari Jackson who collided with each other. So that could have been one. So he left a few out there that could have been even a worse game for him. So yeah.
Yeah, and all my everyday folks out there, I've talked at length about the secondary. I'm very excited to see what they're going to be able to do going into the season. So that's our top 2. And Mitch, you talked about Zaire Torrance without taking a bow yet. I know it's only preseason, but I've talked about him for like 3 episodes now, and you were the one that picked him to be your breakout player this year.
Well, as we say, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
But you're not being honest enough with yourself here, because you're good with this stuff. So in a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk a little bit more. We'll get into the quarterbacks. What's Mitch predicting for the quarterback position? We'll get into that in just a moment. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. For me, I am looking at retirement savings. I want to make sure that I'm starting to put money there because I'm not great with saving. Monarch is helping me set my goals and making sure that I'm hitting my goals, and I love using that. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. My wife loves it. It's a great app for our family, easy to use. I think you'll love it too. Again, 50% off your first year. MonarchMoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here, and if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button here on this podcast. And if you're looking for a second listen, go check out Locked On ACC with Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono. That's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I know a lot of you folks have very strong feelings about what they say about Boston College, so if you want to get angry at them, go listen to them. Now, the quarterback position. We're about to start week 2 of camp, and I've watched 4 practices, and I have no idea who's going to start. I just don't. It's 4 practices. It's hard to tell. They're still in shells. We haven't seen a scrimmage yet. But what's your bold bet, Mitch?
So my bold bet for the quarterback position is that regardless of who it is, they will throw between 2,600 and 3,000 yards passing. And the reason I picked those two numbers is because I think the last time BC had a number that was over 2,000 something was Phil Dracovic in 2020 with 2,558 yards, if I remember correctly. I might be a few yards off there, but it's around 2,500. So I'm rounding up to that. And I think the boldness is that basically the starter is going to play the entire year and throw the ball a lot, which is probably stupid, but this is just for fun. And the 3,000 is the last time, I believe it was Chase Reddick's year in 2012. When BC was 2-10 and they were really bad and throwing the ball all the time. So he racked up a lot of passing yards. But I think that if the starter can win the job and hold on to the job, they can throw for that many yards. This is a good receiving core. I think that the offense is better suited to these two quarterback skill sets than it was Thomas Castellanos. I think you'll see, this is kind of a weird thing to parse, but I think even though the offensive line is going to be worse, just because you lose Ozzie Trapillo, you lose Drew Kendall, you lose Jack Conley, I think you're going to see their numbers be better just because you're going to see the quarterback get the ball out quicker. You're not going to see him hold on to the ball and make as many bad decisions as Castellanos did. So I think that will help them in terms of pressure rate, sacks allowed, what have you. But obviously, you lose guys in the NFL, your offensive line is usually going to get worse unless you're, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, what have you. But still, I think that if on the off chance that the quarterback does stick for the whole year, which is, basically flushing money down the drain for BC in the last decade or so, or at least half decade. So I think they could reach that number because I think this is going to be an underratedly explosive passing offense that I think you could see, something that BC really hasn't had in a while.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say the betting on one quarterback, because I think that's another thing to talk about. Even O'Brien last week just said, I'd expect both of them to play this year.
Yeah.
So not sure what, how that would work, or, if it's a situational thing.
I'm filing that under my Fordham game as a dress rehearsal / audition theory. That they're going to treat that as like the who's going to get the job final thing, and then whoever does better will be the starter going forward, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I don't think he's going to be in a rush. He's going to probably. We get to talk to him again tomorrow at media day for media conferences, and I'm sure he's going to be asked again and again, say the exact same thing, and we'll be getting that for the next month. And all you folks out there that are dying to hear if it's going to be Grayson James or Dylan Lonergan, we're going to probably have to wait until September.
We're not going to have the answer. We're not going to have the answer until
Michigan State.
Say at the end of fall camp, the earliest. I think it's going to be done until week 2. So
yeah,
that's just my 2 cents. Because I think, again, if you look at how NFL teams are handling their similar quarterback things, or even if they have an entrenched starter, there's still a long way to go. There's a long way to go in these training camps. There's a lot of practices left. So we're way too early in the process to make a determination right now. So for my next one, do you want receivers or running backs?
Let's go running backs.
Okay. This one might surprise some people, but my bold bet for running backs is that the Jordan McDonald will lead this team in rushing. And really? I will say I did make this one before Turbo Richard switched to number 2, which is a big factor in my calculus because that's a great number switch for him. But still, I think it's possible because I think that while Turbo is going to be the quote unquote main back, in that he'll be the guy playing the most or about the most, a plurality of the snaps, if you will. You're going to see Alex Broom get snaps on third down as a receiving back and one who's very good in pass protection. I think Jordan McDonald is getting a little slept on here because it took him a while to burst onto the scene. And even last year, based on what he showed against Duquesne, I wasn't a big believer, but then when he popped against Syracuse, like, okay, this guy looks completely different than he did earlier in the year, so he's going to be a contributor. But you also saw him be a decent pass protector and receiving back last year in somewhat limited reps, but you're like, oh, he can actually do that. That's good to see. But I think you're just going to see him get a lot of grinded out carries. And I think that even though the offensive line, again, is going to take a step back, I think that they're going to have a good amount of chemistry working together, just because a lot of them are older players. They've played together before. They're bigger, they're stronger, what have you. So I think you're going to see BC move the ball well, especially, again, early in the year, some bad opponents, some questionable run defenses. They should be able to rack up some yards there. And I think, again, McDonald is going to kind of serve that role that Robichaux had a few years ago as like the closer, where even though he's going to get carries in the early part of the game to wear down the defense a bit, later in the game when the defense is worn down, he's going to be the guy that can come in, break tackles from a weakened defense, and turn those short gains into medium gains and turn medium gains into big gains. Because I think at the end of a game, teams are not going to want to tackle Jordan McDonald. So I think you're going to see him get more touches than we think, and I think he's going to be a very integral part of this offense to the point that I think he could, out rush Turbo in terms of rushing yards.
All right, I'm going to disagree with you, and that's part of this conversation. I think I'm much more on the Turbo bandwagon. I think he'll probably outbeat.
This is basically me. If there were betting odds for this and Turbo was like minus 250 or minus 200 and Jordan McDonald was like plus 300 or plus, I'd be like, okay, that's interesting. Like where I just want to sprinkle something on the odds there, because I do agree with you. Like betting odds or the quote unquote betting favorite is absolutely Turbo Richard. I'm probably gonna be wrong in this one, but I'd like to just kind of think about, okay, what is the scenario where we get to this, and I think it's interesting and decently plausible.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who is, and like you bring up the end of the game back. Like I've watched a little bit, and again, it's hard to see. Like I'm at practices right now, and they're all in shells, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, they're not repping end of game 4-minute drill right now.
Right, and like saying that Turbo is a physical back, watching him at practice is kind of baloney because he's not getting hit. So it's
playing flag football out there,
basically. So it's hard to tell. And again, we have covering it. It just feels like a long time until the start of the season because it is. So in a moment, we have 2 more to go, right, Mitch?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll get into those and talk about how the season will start, and we'll look at wide receivers. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay energized and sharp. So golfing, I love to go out there. I golf with my father-in-law all the time. And man, when some of those days when he's kicking my butt, I need to get myself a good boost. And that's where 5-Hour Energy kicks in. Golf is all about good times with good people. And if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order Transfusion 5-Hour Energy shots today. Wrapping things up, Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. Before we get into this final segment, just want to let you guys know, Eagle Insider for the next month is 50% off. If you have not signed up, it's the perfect time to get in. I have all my practice. I've been to most of the practices. Mike Sidley's going to the other ones. Mitch will be going to one later in the summer. All of those practices, we have notebooks on them. I've got scoops. I've got analysis. I've got breakdowns. It's 50% off. If you want to get good BC coverage, check that out. And if you want to make sure, if you need a second listen, go back and listen to some of my other episodes from the past week. They're all up on our archives. It's all good stuff. Especially, if you missed some of the episodes, they're all right there for you. Just make sure you subscribe and you hit those buttons. All right. Now, let's talk wide receivers. What bold bet do you have for the wide receiver position?
So this one's a little complicated, and it does actually go beyond wide receivers. So my bold prediction for receivers is that Lewis Bond is going to lead the team in targets and receptions, which is not very bold. But combined with that, Reed Harris will lead the team in receiving yards and Jeremiah Franklin will lead the team in receiving touchdowns. Now, Bond is an easy one. He's led the team in targets and receptions the last 2 years, I believe. I believe he also led the team in yards the last 2 years, just because yards are a function of targets and receptions. But I think that you're going to see Reed Harris become a much more integral part of this offense. If you look at last year, he had 41 targets, which is second on the team. But he only had 17 receptions, which is fifth between Jaden Skeet and Trayshawn Ward. So even though, and especially down the stretch, that was when he got a lot of his receptions when Grayson James got in the game. So I think you're going to see him have a larger role. You're going to see his, production go up by a lot. And in fairness to him, a lot of the discrepancy between his targets and receptions were uncatchable throws that weren't his fault. He did have a few drops. He's got to clean that up for sure, but still a lot of bad throws his way. So I'm hoping you can close that gap a bit. And I think if you get him the ball a little more, especially, I think you can get him the ball in space as a runner, not just a deep threat. Like, you can get him the ball on some screens, get him on a tunnel screen, on a drag route where he can use his long legs to just outrun the defender trying to stay with him. So I think you're going to see him take on a much bigger role as a receiver in this year's offense. And then Franklin, you look at last year with Kamari Morales. He led the team receiving touchdowns with 6. The next closest player was Trayshawn Ward and then Reed Harris with 4 each. So Morales is gone. Someone needs to eat up that production. We've seen Franklin have a rapport with these quarterbacks. Last year, even though he wasn't a huge weapon in the offense, he was 5th on the team in targets. He was 3rd in receptions and 4th in yards. And he didn't drop a single pass. Neither him nor Morales did. And he was pretty decent in contested catch situations. And if you remember, BC really liked throwing him the ball in the red zone. You think about the touchdown he had against Virginia Tech. He had one against Syracuse. I do conflate him and Morales sometimes, but I just thought of Morales as one versus SMU. Like, somebody's going to need to take on that role, and that's Franklin, because him and Morales are pretty similar players. And he's going to be a senior this year. He's taken major steps every year he's played at BC. So I think you see him take another step this year, and he can be that really viable threat in the red zone. So I think you're going to, so again, Bond to lead the team in targets and receptions, Harris to lead the team in receiving yards, and Franklin to lead the team in receiving touchdowns.
I think I was on board with all of those. I think I've talked to you about those before, and I agree with you. And
the parlay to make this absolutely insane, that the next leg would be adding like Jaden Skeet for yards per reception, just because he's kind of a weird receiver where he's not. I don't think you're going to see him get a lot of like quick touches like Bond does, especially, but he's also not going to get them a reception. So if you think about every reception of his is like a deep dig or a deep comeback. So like every reception, he's getting targeted downfield. So if they're caught, it's going to be between 15 and 18 yards. So that would, but again, that's such a wonky stat. I'm not going to measure that one. So, but that's just a fun one to think about too.
All right, we have one more to go. And this kind of is a perfect one for Mitch to wrap up with. The start of the season. What is your bold bet about how the start of the season is going to go for BC?
My bold bet for the start of the season is that BC is at least 5-1 going into the Clemson game, and they finish 5-3 in conference play. So, beginning of the season goes Fordham, at Michigan State, at Stanford, bye week, versus Cal, at Pitt, and then Clemson. So you got 5 games. I think they're probably going to lose one of the games to Michigan State or Pitt. They could lose both, but again, the bold bet is that they only lose one. And I think I said at least. So maybe they don't lose either. And then we're really cooking. BC goes in the Clemson game undefeated. And then at that point, I think they go 5-3 in conference play. And I think those 3 losses are likely going to be Clemson. I guess I always forget Notre Dame doesn't actually count. Clemson, Louisville, and SMU. Yeah. So I think that Clemson is just too talented for BC to hang with. I think Louisville is... What I wrote in the preview for that is that BC has to have some kind of absolute advantage over Louisville to win that game, which the past few years they haven't, and therefore they've lost. And last year they blew it 100%. You can't really argue it otherwise. But in the games where they've been close and able to pull off the win, they've had something. They've had AJ Dillon. They've had something big go in their favor, or they've beaten some really bad Louisville teams. So I don't really see, especially on the road, BC really does not, aside from that one AJ Dillon's big breakout game, they do not do well in that stadium. And then SMU, I feel pretty decent about SMU, but there'll be the third loss is going to be it's someone among Pitt, SMU, Georgia Tech, one of those three, because SMU is the red bandana game. It's SMU coming up to Boston in November. We know they don't do well in the cold, as evidenced by the Fenway Bowl and their college football playoff debut. So that could go, and obviously red bandana, big thing in BC's favor. Georgia Tech worries me just because I think their run game could give BC's defensive line some fits. And then Pitt is, again, kind of weird because they got Pitt at the worst possible time last year for Pitt. This year they get them a little earlier. Maybe they're more healthy, they're playing better, so that could be a very interesting game. But yeah, so BC is at least 5-1 going into Clemson, and they finished 5-3 in conference play for the first time in like ever.
That's a bold one, and I think that would be a good one. So, do you have a final record prediction or not yet?
I'm gonna do not yet, but I'm gonna give you a bonus bold prediction. BC finishes not only above average, but in the top 50 in special teams EPA per game.
Wow. So
they were, for reference, they were 127th last year at negative
God.
negative 2.23.
So it cost them 2 points a game.
Yep. And that, ironically, only third worst in the ACC. Syracuse was worst at 3.5, and Clemson was right below them at 2.28. So I think BC will get into the top 50 of that next year. For reference, Florida was 50th at 0.8. So if they can get to basically 1, that's a field goal swing, and that can win you games.
All right. Mitch, where can people find your work?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. I believe I'm the same on Blue Sky. Check out our work at Eagle Insider. Now that I'm have a break from moving, not done yet, but getting back in the swing of opponent previews, we're going to get those done. Going to have some opponent scout, or no, I'm sorry. Going to have a high school scouting report coming out, which I don't usually do, but now I'm finding some more film. And then still previewing the opponents BC will face by position. So we're looking at top linebackers, and I might do defensive backs. We'll see if I do that or AJ's. But getting down to the wire here, less than a month to go until season kicks off, and this is going to be a very interesting season. I think it's going to be a very telling season for how this program is going to go moving forward.
All right. And you can always follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. You can find me on Eagle Insider and Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, TikTok. I'm everywhere. Just look me up. You'll find me. And we'll see you all again tomorrow. And I'll be reviewing Tuesday's practice, any takeaways we have, and all that other good stuff here on Locked On Boston College, your team every day.